Here it is, ladies, the secret to coaching women. You heard it first, is to understand that we're not men. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir right now, right? You know this. But don't we wish the world would know this? Don't we wish the world would appreciate the challenges and the opportunities that it is to be a woman? And because we don't understand this deeply enough, it gets in the way of most effective personal and leadership development. Don't get me wrong. Any great, coaching and leadership development tools are really going to help anyone, irrespective of gender. But as I said, without an understanding of the framework for women, we can end up in a pickle around burnout because Superwoman loves these tools for change. As Arianna Huffington says, it would be futile to attempt to fit women into a masculine pattern of attitudes, skills, and abilities, and disastrous to force them to suppress their specifically female characteristics and abilities by keeping up the pretense that there are no differences between the sexes. This is critical. And we are different in two ways, right? And there's many, many ways, but there are two that are really fundamental that we need to understand. First of all, we are biologically different. So those of us who are born into female functioning bodies, right, with all of the hormones and the organs that go with that, whether we identify as male, non-binary, or female, if our biology is set up with ovaries and all that goes with it, then we bring that into a culture that prioritizes the male experience in the overwhelming number of cultures around the world. I remember as a doctor, I was doing my surgery training and I was scheduled to help out on a big abdominal surgery, and it was day one of my period. And it's tough for me to stand up, on day one of my period for any length of time. But there was no conversation to be had with my male consultant or even my female registrar to say, I'm not sure I can stand here and hold a retractor for 3 hours. And there was a point during that surgery where I nearly fainted, and that would have been disastrous for the person who was being operated upon, as you can imagine. If I'd kind of fallen over and made the field not sterile. So there are many, many ways. And I've got to say, I would have argued strongly until my late 20s, until I burnt out, I would have argued strongly that I was never treated differently for being a woman. But now with the benefit of hindsight and some new lenses, I can see very clearly that we live in a culture that also treats women differently. So if we are female presenting, right, we are treated by the culture differently. And the best example of this that kind of summed it up for me was when I listened to a podcast from one of our certified trainers, so one of many certified trainer. She's also the chaplain at the University of Edinburgh. Her name is Harriet Harris. She has a beautiful podcast, highly recommend it, called The Ministry of Joyful Abundance. And in one of her episodes, Harriet interviewed a writer called Rachel Mann. Now, Rachel is a trans woman. So she was born into a male body, identified as a woman, and she transitioned, I think it was in her 20s or so, to be female. And in that, it was only 5 minutes in the interview, but it landed this point so strongly for me. We don't realize, as those of us who are cisgendered, that the male privilege we're missing out on, right? Whereas Rachel spoke about the fact that she'd by no means predicted or could have begun to understand how impactful it would have been on her life to give up her male privilege when she transitioned to being a female. Does this make sense? Our culture treats women differently, whether we like it or not. And then we have to remember that for those of us, who are cisgendered and heterosexual, that's one layer of the onion. But then we have, we've got to be conscious of race. We've got to be conscious of ability. We've got to be conscious of neurotypicality. So for many women, there may be layers and layers of how the cultural paradigm we live in is affecting us. So our biology processes impacts how we think, process, and feel. I don't know about you, but 7 days before my period arrives, it's what we call D-Day in my home. It's the day that I need to divorce my husband, pull my kids out of school and homeschool. We've got to move country, you know, wind up the entire business, start again from scratch and make jewelry. It's not, and I know it. I mean, I track my cycles. I can tell you that it's happening, but it doesn't stop the anxiety. I'm powerless to stop it on that day. So the best thing I can do is work from bed if possible and not talk to anybody. It changes the way I think on a monthly basis. And then, of course, menopause. I'm joyfully in perimenopause now. I had my first hot flush last month. Woohoo! These things impact how we think, we process, and we feel. So if we are assuming to coach women and talk to them about their belief systems, talk to them about their values, talk to them about why they do the behaviors they do and how to change them, it would be absolutely remiss of us to not be present to the layers around the environment in which that woman is operating. How's this landing, everybody? Do you hear how important it is? When I did my first coach training, it's like, here you go, here's how you change something, but with no acknowledgement for the emotional journey that might be more challenging for me as a woman, or have got the extra finesse that needs to be there. And our philosophy here at One of Many is, what if we worked with our differences rather than in opposition to them? Our hypothesis is that going to lead to happier and more effective women and the change in global paradigm to which we're also deeply committed? And our anecdotal evidence, because I can't stand here and tell you I've done a placebo-controlled double-blind study on it, but our anecdotal evidence from all of our graduates says yes, we are unleashing and unlocking sustainable women, happier women, who are more effective than the old Superwoman version and able to impact the world, but without burning out. And we've got women taking this into organizations. We've got women doing it out of their own businesses. If you're sitting there going, my organization would never do this, I want you to know the CEO of that organization doesn't even know this is happening at the grassroots level. It's just intelligent managers who are seeing the potential in their employees going, yeah, do you know what? Go do that. So we've got to understand the paradigm. This paradigm that women are operating in because of our biology, because of the culture, it influences our beliefs about our self-worth, about our identity, and about our success. And it is largely unconscious. And I want to say here, just, you know, because I haven't said it overtly, One of Many is an inclusive organization. We are open to anyone who identifies as a woman or was born into a female presenting body and identifies otherly, because these two factors really make a difference, and we want to support those sorts of people. So as women who are born into female bodies, we are all unconsciously impacted by a paradigm that is influenced by gender, right? And this paradigm we like to call the masculine paradigm. You may have heard it called many, many things over the years, but we like to call it the masculine paradigm. And it has 4 layers to it. So the 4 layers that we see that you want to start to get a sense of for yourself and indeed for the people that you work with is, first of all, our cultural values, the nation that you live in, right? And the culture within which you operate. So then there is the workplace values, where the values of the organizations we work within. There are family values, our family of origin and what they taught us, and then personal values that we develop over a lifetime. So let's have a look at each of these, not in a load of detail, but a bit of a slice on each to understand it more deeply. There was some interesting research done by a guy called Hofstadter and his team about the relative motivation. He looks at all sorts of different spectra of, I think he's got 6 different value spectra of countries around the world. One of the ones he looks at is motivation towards achievement and success. So that is motivation towards achievement and success at one end of the spectrum, and motivation towards quality of life at the other, right? And he calls this the MAS spectrum. And he rates these countries. So you can see there that Japan is number one highest on the MAS spectrum with a score of 95 out of 100, being a culture that is predominantly motivated by achievement, success, individualism, heroism, and so forth. At the other end of the spectrum, you can see, some of the Nordic states there, Denmark, Sweden, and so on, with a score, if it's less than 50, it's more towards the quality of life end of the spectrum, where humility, where community, where collaboration and so forth are much more valued. And then you can see there that those countries, it kind of makes sense to me, right? That these countries tend to work better. This is where we see the highest rates of natural term breastfeeding and home birthing and so forth. It's where we see, penal systems that actually work to lower the recidivism rate and so forth. So these countries are not just focused on what's best for women, it's also better for all humanity, if you want to think about it that way. So if we're living in one of these countries, and I haven't got every country on my table just there, but if you go to the website, you can do your own research and look for your country of origin if it's not here on the page. But these are just the ones they cited in the excerpt. But as you look at it, you can see that young girls born into countries like the UK, where I live currently, Australia, where I come from, which are towards the achievement and success end of the spectrum, we unconsciously learn that if we want to be of value, we need to be individuals that achieve and succeed, right? That's more important than connection, humility, collaboration, and so forth. Can you hear the distinction? Now, it's of course a spectrum, but that's the messaging we get. It's interesting, Christelle, what you say about it being 24 years old. In interviews with Hofstadter, he says that the makeup of countries doesn't change quickly. The value sets of countries don't change quickly because of culture. So the dating, he states, is irrelevant. Yes, of course, you could dive into this and what have you. So you don't kind of need the updated, if you like, because the value sets of countries remain quite stagnant over time. But interesting, right? Interesting. But even if at an anecdotal level you look at it, ask yourself, what is your culture? Look at your media, right? Look at your media. What does it tell you? Does it tell you to does it tell you to collaborate and be in community and to sacrifice for one another? Or does it tell you to win, succeed, earn the most money, be the best? You can see, right, what the media messaging tells us. And that's how you know what your culture is telling you. And then, of course, we end up in workplaces. Workplaces then have their own value set that tell us what is right. So I want you to reflect now on your first kind of developmental workplaces where you worked. For me, it was the hospital system, which was very hierarchical. It was all, you just proceeded from intern to resident to registrar, not because of any merit, but because that's what came next in the thing until you got to consultant, just step by step. You had to pass some exams, but it wasn't that the ones that were better got further or what have you. It was very hierarchical. And I was told that my needs were secondary to patients' needs, not overtly, but covertly. And I was told that you don't bill for overtime, that my time is irrelevant. And, my effective hourly rate was probably something around the $10 an hour mark, So it didn't teach me to value myself. Let's put it that way. What did your first workplaces tell you? What did they tell you was the workplace, what was right? But the culture is saying that it is still pointing in a different direction. So we have to be very aware of this. So you can hear that the workplace is very much at this achievement, success, individualism, make it happen end of the spectrum for most workplaces. Would you agree? So another layer here that tells women how to be. You've got to achieve success and do it all by yourself. Then we have what our family tells us is right, right? So this is then the third layer of this. So what did your family tell you was the right way to be? And for many women, we got mixed messages, right? Because on the one hand, we were told that we absolutely should get a really great education. But on the other hand, we were also told that you need to be the one that stays home and looks after the children. You know, not consciously spoken, but it's what you see, right? And so we get these conflicting messages. One of our Lead the Change graduates that I write about in my book, Mandala Khani, is a British Indian woman. Her father came out here when he was very young, and she was born here, but she got this massively mixed messaging, which turned her totally into Superwoman, because on the one hand, she had to be massively academically successful and get a great job, but on the other hand, she also had to be the one who was looking after the children, cooking the perfect Indian meals every day, etc., etc. That was just everything was on the plate, and that led to burnout and exhaustion. So what did your family tell you? What did your family tell you? Mine said achieve, achieve, achieve. You know, I have a dad who's probably narcissistic, and the way he expressed love was bragging about me and my achievements to his friends. That's how I knew he loved me, right? So of course I knew if I want to get love, I'm going to achieve, achieve, achieve. And so these beliefs come in. So when you look at these four levels, what culture you're born into, workplace, family, personal things, then it usually has three major outcomes for women. Not always, but most women that I speak to, and certainly that come into the One of Many community, relate to one of these three definitions. Either, like me, you've turned into Superwoman, where you've become an achiever. And for, you know I speak from white privilege when I say that, because a lot of the Black women that I speak to, or women of color, often Superwoman isn't about achievement necessarily. She can be just about survival, right? Being all over everything all of the time is necessary to be okay, to be able to survive in a culture which is racist and, white supremacist. So, so Superwoman is option one. That's where we often end up. Another option is that perhaps you had an older sister or a mother who was Superwoman, and you thought to yourself, God, if that's the only way to succeed, then I don't want a bar of that. And we check out from the game and we go into what I call anti-Superwoman. But even anti-Superwoman is a response to the cultural paradigm that says this is what success looks like. Or we end up conflicted, where I call it 1 foot on the accelerator, 1 foot on the brake, right? Where we go hell for leather for 3 months and then we exhaust ourselves, and so we stop. We go and we stop. We go and we stop. We change organization. We burn out. We change organization, thinking it was the organization, but actually it's our internal drivers that have been shaped by these external forces. Does this make sense, everybody? In the chat box, share with me, which of these do you resonate with most? Can you hear it? And if we're still in the paradigm that shapes her, we don't have another choice. This is kind of like the Matrix moment. I just rewatched the Matrix on the plane on the way back from Australia. Red pill, blue pill. Do you want to wake up and see it the way that it really is? And when you do, when you step out of the paradigm, it's uncomfortable, but that's where change begins. Here at One of Many, we say we need a new kind of power to be the woman that the world needs us to be. I say we need a new kind of power to be the woman that we need to be as well, right? So rather than the power centers that the masculine paradigm calls forth from us, Superwoman or anti-Superwoman or conflict, we can step into a completely new paradigm. And we call this new paradigm soft power. Not soft as in walk all over me, but agreeable, calm, gentle, yielding to the truest nature of ourselves, our authentic nature, because most of us are operating not from center, but from what our paradigm tells us we should be operating from. So soft as in it is aligned with who we are, authentic to who we are. And power from the middle, everyone's path is different, but the inspiration is there. Yes, exactly. So one of the question that often then comes up is, well, how do I step into this soft power? How do I operate from this new paradigm? And this was the question that I had after my burnout. I knew I had to stop buying into what the culture was telling me was the right way to be and discover a new way of being for myself.